Yes, thank you so much for your warm welcome and welcoming everyone here, including myself. It is really a delight to be here. And yeah, I look forward to practicing with you, sharing some reflections and hearing the questions, reflections, thoughts on your minds and hearts in the later part of our time together. So, so here we are. Um, the invitation was why meditate? Right. And this question kind of comes up a lot. A lot of people have come to the Buddhist teachings through the doorway of meditation. But as I have been reflecting, I actually didn't. And so as I have been reflecting and been with many other practitioners, it's really clear that many more people around the world have learned about the Buddha through stories. Stories imparting lessons on how to live wisely, as the description invited you in, right? So another title that I could have put here is mutuality as a doorway to wisdom, right? So we'll explore that a bit in the talk. Um, you know, and a lot of students also have this question around um, how do they bring their formal meditation practice into their daily lives? And this question is pointing to kind of this feeling of practice, meditation practice being far away from touching or being applied into lives. And so in my mind, it's like, oh, well, the options are infinite. There are so many ways. And I think it comes from that orientation that I've had. I kind of entered the teachings and practice with meditation actually not being forefront. I actually started meditating much later, a few years later. And so actions, speech, and even our thoughts are really beautiful venues for us to apply practice that are off the cushion, that are informal. And so we can explore what that might look like in practical ways as well. And as we enter, I will start with the typical form, which is meditation, which might even be paradoxical. Why meditate? So I'll just start with some brief response of why meditate. And there are, of course, many answers. But today I'll just focus on the two things the Buddha emphasized that were onward leading, particularly to freedom from this unnecessary psychological suffering that we have in our lives, often named as nibbana, liberation, freedom, right? And these two elements are calming the heart and mind, and then investigating or discerning our experience, right? So this discerning or investigation is opening to the development of understanding, insight, and wisdom. So those are kind of maybe the first answers I'll give to why meditate. And much as I see it and understand it, the summation, if I were to summarize the Buddhist teachings, I would say something like probably similar to what many of you have heard. It's something about developing wisdom and compassion, these two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion, as a path to lead to the end of suffering, this unnecessary suffering, particularly. And I emphasize unnecessary because there is the inevitable physical pain we will have in our lives. The Buddha, after awakening, right, had physical pain. So like there is a type of necessary suffering, you could say, with just being embodied as a human. And there will be pain with loss. And when I say unnecessary suffering, I'm also talking about just this psychological layer on top of the pain that we experience of why me or why them, or the blame or shame that we add on to experience that's not actually necessary. And so we can again talk a bit more about that after the guided meditation. And so, yeah, so I'll invite you to get comfortable in a position that's for meditation, or 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes. And so this guided meditation will be an invitation to open our awareness beyond kind of the strong stories of this central character, this actor of our lives, you, me, right, ourselves, and all that impacts us, right? And so the invitation will be to settle in a very simple orientation, right? To experience that is open to whatever is being known through your senses, through sensations, kind of emotional knowing in the body, thoughts, sounds as they change and shift. That will be the general invitation. And so, without making stories or being hooked into any mental activity, we can be in contact with this vitality of being alive, awake in this moment. It's always with us, and it's so often overlooked, right, in our busy lives, And so, we're alive, dynamic beings. There's so much we can experience if we can slow down, and and there's a way that this mental activity that's overlaying much of our lives with an agenda, with expectations, can quiet and soften and kind of melt away, even if temporarily. And of course we need that part of our life, right? But maybe not during meditation, right? This is maybe a benefit, an opening to what meditation can offer, right? So we can put that down and we can open to whatever else is here to be known, just for a little while, right? And uh, see if that story of self in our lives can take a back seat. And, it might even dissolve temporarily, and that would be welcome too. And so as you're settling into your posture of meditation, whether it's sitting or lying down, just inviting, not forcing or pushing, but inviting a softening or ease in the body, noticing if there's any, tension holding in the body that can be softened around, knowing that some tension will remain and that's fine, it's expected. And just really take your time, even if it means going through the body slowly, just to see if there's tension lingering, or maybe it's just allowing the moment to settle, feeling gravity, the groundedness of contact, the body sitting, lying down, allowing the width of the shoulders to be known, opening the chest, but not pushing, just allowing the shoulders to melt away from the ears, to widen. Inviting the ribs to move as you breathe. The belly can soften and move. And maybe with this, you might notice an ease in the pelvis or the hips, allowing the legs to fall away from the torso. Often we're unconsciously pulling the legs up and into the torso. So allowing the hips and the pelvis to relax and letting the legs, even if just with the thought of falling away from the body. And just like the shoulders can be wide, the pelvis and the legs can be wide. And just feeling the gravity moving through the legs and the feet into the floor. And so we're inviting this relaxation, but also inviting an alertness and this curious attention, this kind attention, the lengthening of the spine, both moving down with gravity and up to the top of the spine with the head just gently coming off of the spine. Noticing if there's any pulling back of the head down into the spine, allowing it to move up and away. Maybe even slightly lowering the chin to feel a release in the back of the neck. If it's possible, not pushing, not tucking the chin, but just seeing if there's any opening that's available. Again, noticing if there's any tension in the face or jaw. It can be softened around the eyes, cheeks, the jaw. And just notice the body in its full posture, sitting, breathing, with relaxation, stability, and also movement. No right, no wrong in our experience, really just noticing what arises as we're settling in. And if you can direct your attention to any sensation you're feeling in the body that feels neutral or even pleasant, and just lingering there, allowing attention to rest there. And any thoughts that arise can come and go with the movement of the breath. All the awareness just rests in sensations of the body that are neutral or pleasant. Just noticing this area of the body and slowly expanding that awareness wherever it might be, whether it's a particular point of the hand that expands to the full hand that you're sensing into, or of the leg or the back or shoulder, just allowing awareness to expand slowly, gradually, noticing that there are places where you might not be able to feel, maybe an absence of feeling, or maybe there are sensations that feel different, and you can be curious, not needing them to be any particular way, but allowing awareness to slowly and continuously expand throughout the body. And slowly, with each in and out breath, taking your time to allow the awareness of sensation to inhabit the full extent of the inner body awareness. No rush, just taking your time. Maybe feeling temperature, tingling sensations, or the pulsing of the heartbeat. Whatever it is, just noticing the various sensations as you expand awareness throughout your inner sense of the body, sitting, lying down, resting in meditation. And sensations will come and go. Just noticing the change. And periodically checking to see if there's any tension that might be accumulating in the body. And if it's supportive, feeling free to take a deep breath. And with the exhale, just softening around any physical tension. And continuing to inhabit the body with full embodied awareness. allowing the body to rest, allowing the mind to rest with the body. And if you wish, feeling free to particularly open awareness to sound, sounds that are near and far from wherever you're sitting in the world. Just allowing sound to be a part of the awareness and experience of the full body sitting. Maybe even naturally or reflexively with this, you might be feeling kind of the skin layer of the body, the temperature in the room that you're in, or the clothing touching the skin, or whatever might be touching the skin. Just allowing this to be a part of your awareness as well. Sounds as they change, sensations as they change, thoughts as they change, even emotions as they come and go. And just being aware, noticing what's here. It's vitality, simplicity, being awake for all of experience. Now, again, if you wish, and always feeling free to move back to any neutral or pleasant sensation, you can expand this awareness beyond kind of the boundary that we might have created of the body and the space that you're in, just feeling into the space around the body. It's kind of this dense body, and then the space around it, less dense. The body can move into space. And you might even have a sense of the space within the body as you breathe. And just noticing space and sound, as well as any sensations in the body coming and going. And again, if you wish, slowly expanding the awareness even further outward to fill the room, the space that you're in, not losing touch with this alive, breathing body, expanding awareness along with sound outward, remaining mindful, balanced with what's here, what's being noticed, not pushing. And of course, if you've gone out to a point that feels less supportive, you can certainly move back in to wherever feels supportive, and balanced and restful. And so letting you experiment, allowing awareness to reach out further and further beyond the room you're in. And seeing if awareness notices, senses this space, any sounds, any sensations as they move and change. allowing awareness to expand and come nearer as feels restful and supportive, and continuing to allow thought to come and go, just like all other transitory experience, like sound, sensations, like the breath, breathing in and out. Bringing a kind, curious awareness, not grasping or pushing away any of your experience, and seeing what's here, what's alive, what's arising, what's shifting, what's moving. Not knowing, but being curious. What's happening in this moment? In this moment. Keeping it simple. With an orientation of rest. Just noticing what's happening in your experience. Noticing if any tension has creeped into the body, and again, inviting a full deep breath to release any tension that can soften. Noticing the quality of your attention and awareness. And if there's rest present, care, and maybe there's agitation, but noticing. Allowing the awareness and attention to rest in neutrality or even pleasant sensations. And again, inviting ease and rest into your practice. Thank you for your practice. Allowing your awareness to settle and opening the eyes if they were closed. Moving the body and stretching if needed. And taking some time to reorient in this way, or continuing in meditation as I offer reflections. All is welcome. And so, yeah, I went into a little bit of how I was, thinking about, this meditation and really, intentionally allowing it to provide a platform for you to rest, to be at ease. And I'll talk a little bit later about why that is. But I hope it was useful. And yeah, and I'll offer some reflections, maybe for 20 minutes or so, and then open up to any reflections you have and any questions that I might respond to. Yeah. And so, yeah, I was thinking about the description that I offered, um, inviting you to this Sunday Sangha. And so, hearing the stories of the Buddha and his many lives, but before becoming Siddhartha, Sakyamuni Buddha, um, hearing those stories, it's much more commonplace in Asia than it is in many other parts of the world today, right? And that makes sense. He He, lived in India, born in now Nepal, right? And these stories are fables and sometimes called Jakata tales, right? And they're cultural, right? They're beyond the religion of Buddhism, and they're often used as stories to illustrate lessons about wise and ethical ways to act in the world. So virtues like generosity, compassion, truth-telling, patience, kindness, um, self-respect, self-control, discernment, right? These are all examples of qualities, the Buddha, of the Buddha that were highlighted, and more in these types of stories. And I'm sure, I'm sure that each of you have heard stories, right, when you were much younger, right? Stories, that we often tell to children or read to children that are highlighting ethics or virtues, inviting us to consider our actions in the world. Right, so this is kind of how many of these stories of the Buddha are held, right, and shared. And as I was saying, it's quite common for meditation practitioners to ask teachers, how to bring their formal practice into their daily lives. And so my quick response in my head is like, oh, there's so many options. There's action, speech, even thought. And these are beautiful and, always present ways to apply our practice. And so, many of you have probably heard of Thich Nhat Hanh, right? And one of the teachings that have been, very popularized is his teaching of interbeing, right? That there you can have a piece of paper, and in the paper there is a cloud, right? The cloud that had rain fall onto the tree that was made into this paper and is now connected to us. So we're interbeing. We're interconnected. We inter-are with all of what is around us in ways that we can see and ways we can't see. We can't separate ourselves individually from anything, right? There's also this understanding that some of you may have heard in Africa, many regions of Africa, this word Ubuntu, right? I am because we are is sometimes how it's translated, or a person is a person through other people is another translation, or humanity to others is another. I'm just like thinking of these ways it's been offered, right? Humanity to others, right? So there are many ways that we can understand this kind of non-separation from that which is around us, this mutuality, as I was pointing to before, and how we're not separate. And the Buddha taught, particularly for lay practitioners, kind of one way to practice we could think of is through dana, which is often translated as generosity, sila, which is often translated as ethical conduct, and bhavana, which is often translated in this context as like cultivation of the heart and mind, right? And that's often seen through meditation. And so dana and sila, right, generosity and ethical conduct, these two elements are not meditation, right? And so this is actually how I entered the practice, through the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, as was mentioned before, and particularly actually orienting my life as a teenager around generosity and ethical conduct. I was really curious about many things about the world, and ways that I could enter kind of into my adolescence in a way that felt beneficial to all the confusion that was around me, the difficulties, and I knew that kind of my heart was open to offering something, and this, Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings around dana, sila, and bhavana really spoke to me. So dana, generosity, was already a bit spoken about today, and we can talk about, more about that a bit later in the reflections you might have. But it's inviting us to open the heart to mutuality, right? And I already said that, this another title could have been Mutuality as a Doorway to Wisdom. I really feel that dana and sila are this invitation to actually cultivating the heart through relationality. So, we're opening the heart in dana, both giving and receiving, right, as fundamental ways, right, interbeing, fundamental ways of interacting in the world, right? So, you know, just as, we are kind of dependent on our parents when we're born and the people that helped raise us, our peers, we're dependent on the earth for our food, for animals in the various ways that they cultivate ecosystems that, maintain life on this planet in ways that we don't even understand and know, or the elements, right, beyond this earth, right, the sun providing the heat, without discrimination to allow, you know, the the miracle that is this planet, and on. Water, we can talk about all of the elements, but there's a mutuality here that goes beyond kind of our willfulness. It simply is, right? And so in this invitation of the Buddha, right, to practice generosity, it's really to open our hearts to, one, recognize this clearly, and to stay open, right, to maintaining this natural occurrence in our existence, because humans are a bit complex, and we're aware that we're aware, and we have this consciousness, and we have these, we're social beings. Our hearts can often constrict. There is difficulty that can arise in that potentially can be less transitory, right, than other animals, right? They might have, let's say, some wild geese have a fight, birds have a fight, and then they resolve it in whatever way that they do, and they move on, perhaps. But for us, we can hold grudges. Humans can hold grudges, and our hearts can really obstruct or constrict, right? And we can obstruct the movement kind of this natural kind of give and take, reciprocity, mutuality that over time can accumulate and create difficulties in our lives, right? So we might see that in forms of isolation, pushing away from other people or other things, or grasping and needing, and kind of, in a type of greedy way, right? For whatever it might be, right? The Buddha talks about greed and aversion as these, these ways that we constrict, actually, that we constrict our experience, and it contracts the heart, and it can cause difficulty. Tanha is the word I'm referring to. For those of you who know, this is the cause of suffering, right? So generosity as a practice can be a pathway of cultivating an open heart to giving, receiving, right? And there's no perfect way to do this, right? There's, this can play out in so many, numberless ways. And so the giving, it's important to think of it, without expectation of result, right? Without expectation of, return, right? So we're giving freely. We're opening the heart freely and giving, and we're also receiving with an open heart. And what does that mean, right? We can receive in ways that are like, oh, no, it's okay. But we can already feel that. that's a constriction. So can we receive with a heart that's open, with gratitude? And this is an important part of our practice as well, as we all will be in many positions of the giving and receiving cycles. And so to practice doing that with an open heart really allows, actually, for the continuation of these natural flows to move with some balance, right? And you can start even like with every meal, right? This open-hearted gratitude for just having this food available in whatever ways it came to you, really acknowledging that it's not a given that we have a meal, right? And to really slow down and acknowledge that, oh, wow, a lot had to happen for this food to arrive here, right? Just as, the cloud is in the piece of paper. There's more than we could ever know, truly, right? Or we could even begin with every breath, right? That we have clean enough air, that we have the vitality in our body to simply continue, again, beyond understanding. But we can cultivate this kind of gratitude, this open-hearted, not taking for granted the mutuality of this life, this earth, this cosmos beyond the physical earth, right? It's larger than we might ever really be able to understand, but opening our heart to this and the many layers of what this can invite is a part of the practice that the Buddha invited us into. And so, cultivating this into our life can sustain us in many ways that are important. And we might not notice when it's gone, but when it's a part of your life, it can really open up avenues and areas of the life and the heart that are nourishing, that are supportive, that are onward leading to liberation. And so this second quality, sila, it builds on from this open heart, right? And this mutuality of all things, right? And this kind of narrows us into this perspective of our own actions, the way we speak and the ways that we act in the world, as part of this shared mutual existence here. And so it's asking us to be aware and curious about the impact that our life brings in the world, right? And this, again, for in my mind, it's like, oh, this could be the entire practice. Generosity could be the entire practice. Sila could be the entire practice, to really be with an open heart and curious about our mutuality in all ways, not just human again, right? And the impact that we have in the world, right? And being curious in a way that it changes over time according to the impact that we see, that we hear, right? So, the Buddha, a huge part of this practice is kind of this principle of non-harming, right? And you can think of it as supporting life, right? So we can learn from our past and current actions, if we're supporting those aims kind of in our own behavior and speech. And if I'm not, right, I am committed to actually, I can remind myself of this commitment of non-harm, and I can take action to make changes about how I speak or act in the world. And, there's a teaching that the Buddha gave to his son Rahula when he was 7. And the short of it is that the Buddha said to Rahula to repeatedly reflect before any action or speech if this would cause harm to himself, to Rahula, or another. And if it would cause harm, to refrain from doing it, to figure out another thing to do, right? And if, it passed the test, he's like, it won't cause harm to myself or the other, continue, right? And so during this action, this activity, reflect then, is this causing harm to yourself, to another, right? And then if Rahula could say, no, it's not causing harm, I can continue. And then Rahula, after the action, after speaking, after whatever was done, he was said to reflect again. Did it cause harm to myself, to the other, to, the world, whatever the context is, right? And I find this to be really supportive as a teaching. One, because of the practicality, before, during, and after. Okay, that's very clear. And also this real compassion that the Buddha, the Buddha's telling a 7-year-old. And, many of us have, we haven't raised a 7-year-old, have likely seen a 7-year-old. We were 7-year-olds. And when we're 7, this is a tall order, number one. That's a tall order, to ask a 7-year-old to pause and reflect before they do something, while they're doing something, and then after they're doing something, right? But then the compassion that I see in the story is that the Buddha said to repeatedly reflect, right? And this word repeatedly really highlights that the Buddha is not expecting perfection, is not expecting things to be right all of the time or wrong all of the time, but it's actually just a continuous practice, right? So it's not about us being hard on ourselves when we've done something, when we're like, oh, after the fact, oh, that actually was harmful. It's really just asking us, one, to reflect, and then two, the invitation of this commitment is to continue to amend, right? If I'd said something that was harmful, I can actually care about the impact of that, and then say something else, say something, in addition to that, to see how I might, repair that harm, right? So it's really this invitation to really just include this as part of our practice, to repeatedly reflect before, during, and after. And it is a tall order, even for us, let alone a 7-year-old, right? We're doing so many things much of the time. But if we can remember, even if we just choose one relationship, right? Maybe it's with ourselves, right? Or, it's with a dear one that we're with much of the time, maybe we live with, or at work with a particular colleague, reflecting before, during, and after, just allowing yourself a step into the possibility of what this might reveal, what this might show you. And it can show so many things, but being curious, actually, with an open mind, we might, kind of have this radical honesty with ourselves in the ways that our habits show up, in ways that we might not love, but it can allow us to choose to be in the world in a different way that supports life, that's refraining from harming, right? And so just with these two, Donna and Sila, right, so many people who call themselves Buddhist might even stop there. That is their full practice. They're fully committed to that and their full life. And they don't meditate, right? And their conduct and their lives really benefit from these practices, right? And then there's bhavana, this third invitation, right? And this is the cultivation of the heart and mind. This is meditation. It's not only meditation, right? Because Dana and Sila are actually already cultivating the heart and mind, you might have noticed, right? But it's further cultivating it through the practice of meditation. And I mentioned before, there's calming meditation, and there's more of a like investigative meditation. And the importance of calming the heart and mind is that it allows, some more clarity than our typical kind of habitual, busy minds, in seeing the habits that we have. Slowing down, or without slowing down, it can be really hard to see what's right in front of us. Our habits are hard to see because they're habits. But if we slow down and we investigate, right, this other quality of meditation, which the Buddha was pointing to as integral, right, we can really, really benefit, right? And sometimes just because things are right in front of us, we might have close, wonderful friends around us who are kind and honest and can offer a reflection, right? And so, so we can be curious about these habits, these patterns, and when we slow down in meditation, often what many of us have already experienced in cultivating a practice is maybe restlessness, right? Because we're so busy, because, slowing down is the opposite of what, much of the culture is asking us to do, to even relax and to disengage, to engage less with the world, can feel a little disorienting and painful. We might just feel things that are there that we don't want to feel. And I think of this as, it's like when your foot or your leg falls asleep, right, from sitting in a particular way or sitting too long in a particular way. And when we move and it's regaining sensation, we can feel a lot of pain. I think of restlessness often like that, right? So we might, when we start meditating, we might experience an increased sense of restlessness when we're slowing down, when we're starting to touch into simplicity of just breathing or just sitting, right? And this is almost a necessary element to move through, just like, waking up a sleep leg or foot. We have to kind of move through the pain for it to, gain its balance again, its equilibrium, right? And so restlessness is kind of one of those things we might more prominently notice at the beginning of a session of sitting, or just generally in your practice. And just because it's uncomfortable, right, we can still remind ourselves in the utility of slowing down, and this calming the agitated body and mind through meditation is, just one important element, right, as I was saying. And so we can then more easily see the greed that might be in our system and the pain that causes, right, this wanting, this grasping after, right? We might see the aversion, the pushing away that's in our system, and the pain that causes when we're pushing away, pushing against experience. Kind of when we're kind of calm and settled in our experience, we can more easily see the ways that we're confused, the ways that we don't know what's happening, and then the pain that causes, right? Greed, aversion, delusion. are often how it's, spoken about in the Buddhist teachings. And so we can see on more and more subtle levels, once the mind is calm, once we're kind of, settling away from the restlessness that's pulling us into the busyness, these elements, these qualities. We can certainly see them when we're practicing with sila, when we're practicing with dana, generosity, and ethical conduct. We can certainly see those there, but meditation allows us to see in a more subtle way, right? And we can also see compassion. We can also see a loving heart. We can also see our generous heart showing up. We can also see in a balanced way, in a wise way, the joys and the sorrows that are happening in the world and in our lives. We can see gratitude. We can see our liberation, even momentary liberation from greed, aversion, and delusion when we slow down. Right? There are so many moments, I am sure of it, in everyone here, all of our lives, every day, that are absent of greed, of aversion, and of delusion. And we actually mostly miss those moments because, the mind isn't actually connected with all of our experience. And it's so subtle to have this subtle ease, right? The subtle joy that's available just from the lack of greed, aversion, or delusion in our experience. And actually cultivating our mind and heart to that type of sensitivity will allow us to experience that ease, will allow us to really notice when it's arising in our systems. And I'm sure it's been experienced for all of us today already. So meditation can offer us kind of a doorway into seeing these beautiful qualities of what's already here as well. And so I said, this, the meditation, the guided meditation I offered, I'd speak a little bit more about kind of the motivation for that. And it really was to invite you into a possible, right? We're all going to have different experiences, but a possible experience just to kind of move away from, often when we're kind of contracted in this sense of identity or self, there's like a physical contraction that comes with it. And so to offer a meditation that invites us into ease, into rest, into expanding the awareness, often that kind of narrative of me, myself, I, that story and all that impacts our lives can really quiet down. And so experiencing that in meditation and actually potentially experiencing kind of the mutuality of all that's in our space and all that's in our awareness, the sounds, the sensations, the whatever is happening in our body, if you're digesting food and you're kind of hearing that process, or the heart beating and feeling the vitality of just the simplicity of being here, and us not actually being actors and doing that. We don't beat our own hearts. We don't know how to regulate our temperature. But this is happening here now, right? And we can actually experience that in a knowing way, and appreciate the millions of bacteria in our gut allowing us to be here, right? And I don't know the ratio, but I do remember, as I'm saying this, I do remember somebody, a scientist, saying that there are more non-human cells in our body than there are human cells, right? And so just speaking of mutuality, like, that's astonishing. And to actually feel into that gift that's being offered to us and with us, with our support and sustaining our bodies and hearts and minds. What a way to be in contact with life. And so, I'll pause shortly, but really, there are so many ways to enter practice and to open the heart, to practice with the giving and receiving, the generosity of dana, to practice with like real intention around our actions and our speech, and sila, right? These are kind of undervalued and underemphasized doorways of very strong practice, that can really be cultivated in addition to meditation, and change our lives in really beautiful ways and unexpected ways. Right? And meditation can certainly be useful, right? In supporting, just the cultivation, again, of calm, of a wise, kind of heartful response to the world. And really, we all know in the many ways that we're experiencing and seeing that there's real pain, there's real loss, there's real destruction in this world that's being carried out. And many of us and many of the people I'm working with day to day are asking, what should I do? What can be done, right? With our values, with your values, however they're sitting in your heart and mind. And of course, I can't answer that question for you, but I think it's a very good question. How do we move in this world full of pain in the personal ways and the global ways, really with commitment to these values of not harm and of engaging in ways that are actually contributing to further non-harm in the world. So yeah, really open to any of your reflections, any of your questions that might be bubbling up, and I'll respond the best that I can. And then just repeating that, Sangha Live is a practice. It's running through this practice of generosity. My teaching is a practice of generosity. I have no idea, and Sangha Live has no idea if they will continue being able to offer what they can offer. But they do from a generous heart, just with this knowing that these teachings are so beneficial in the world. And whatever you can do, your presence here is really, really appreciated, as it was already said. And you're acting in the world, your speech, your actions, your hearts, your thoughts in the world are such an offering as well. And Sangha Live and myself, we are truly supported by any financial generosity you might offer as well. And so whenever in this moment or in the next moments of the weeks and months ahead, really when you are offering, cultivating this quality of generosity, really just as the reflection for Rahula before, during, and after an action, you can actually ask that question around your heart. I actually did that for a year as part of my generosity practice, is like reflecting, how is the heart now before this action of generosity, right? And then during, how is the heart? And this, is it constricting as I'm giving? Is there something happening there? Which is good to know. And then after, how does the heart feel? Right? Allowing that to be a part of your generous curiosity and practice can really be informative, right? Because we don't want to give too much. That actually might be unskillful, right? And we want to be curious about the heart if it's open and constricting. And again, I could keep talking, but I'm curious to hear from you. What reflections do you have? What questions are alive for you? And again, you can raise your digital hand, or you can write in the chat as well. Yeah, so thank you all for your presence and kind attention. Yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat a comment. When doing retreats with Bhante Gunaratana, whom I've also practiced with, he's wonderful. He offered to take 8 precepts, right? In addition, yeah, and added 3 to the above 5 typical precepts that are often taken on retreat, and they all have to do with wise speech. Yeah, thank you for that reflection. So, yeah, I'll pause here and open for other reflections, questions, comments. Yes, Robin.
Hey there. Thank you so much for today. And I'm just like a total newbie here with this gang. And like just really impressed and sort of like, awed with this ability to get together. I don't know if people are a part of different sanghas or, how that works, but to come and meditate like this and talk Dharma is really wonderful. And so Thank you. And I hope that this, like, I don't know how new it is. I probably should have heard something in the beginning or read something, but this is fantastic for the world these days, right? And this is international, right? So just some
Yeah.
words there.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you so much, Robin. So glad that you're here. So glad that you're here. Yeah, I actually don't know how old Sangha Live is. It's more than 10 years. I feel like maybe 15 even. Like I don't know. It's been around for quite some time. And certainly, it was like already in place before the pandemic and certainly such a refuge for so many people when we could no longer, really safely at all meet in person. And it continues, just as before the pandemic, it's continuing now to offer internationally. There are so many people who don't have access to regular sanghas to sit with in person, and so this is really a gift to us all to be together, to sit together, to talk Dharma together, as you were saying, Dharmakata, which is such a gift actually to be in community with people who understand Dhamma and the ways in which it can touch and move us, and even the challenges within it as well. So glad you're here, Robin. It's every Sunday, so feel free to return. Yeah, and yes, I see your hand, Saki.
Hi, peace. Thank you for that the talk, and yeah, just reflecting as well about the importance of this sangha and this space, and what you're saying about sila and thinking about causing no harm, and before the action and during the action and after, and just thinking, yeah, I've heard this before, and then you forget and you think, and just hearing you say that, yeah, you practice this for a year, and then part of the problem is the forgetting, just the forgetting to hold it in mind. And I suppose one of the things about, sitting practice is you notice how much the mind is just full of all this kind of chatter, and just thinking that's part of the problem is the challenge is trying to clear away all that chatter, to remember that thing you're trying to hold in mind. So my question really is, how do you remember, right, I'm going to do this for a year, I'm going to, what is the thing that made you remember to practice that all year and not let it slip away?
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate that question. It's just like mindfulness as you're sitting, like on the cushion. It's just like remembering to come back, remembering to come back. For me, I think yeah, that year it was really because I was very curious around generosity. So because I narrowed it to not all of my actions, because I think that might be a little overwhelming, I narrowed it to a particular type of action, which was generosity. That was supportive for me. I certainly know that some people think about maybe all of their actions in relationship to a particular person, right? Or particular
Mm,
people. So, and you might not even tell them. It might be a colleague at work. It might be, a loved one at home. It might be,
mm,
a friend, right? So it's kind of narrowing the scope to one, just not overwhelm you because our lives are so active, but also to then, right, remember, right? It's like it's always this person for an entire year, right?
mm,
Always this person. And you might forget sometimes, but you'll remember again and again if it's just like kind of one person, one area of your life that you're kind of driving that attention toward. Yeah.
mm.
How does
Yeah.
that sound for you?
No, that sounds good. It's true because if you, I could do that because there are things that keep coming up in relation to it will be a particular thing, and that can then be the focus
Hmm.
is that person, and using the practices focused around that person.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's whether it be dana or sila or whatever you want to focus on at that point in time, using that person, you're right, as a kind of private, kind of secret almost focus, because I
Right.
know, like, I can think of someone that I've got this inner dialogue of irritation about them, but they're a person in my life, they're a family member. I really have a lot of love and care for them, but I've also got this kind of running dialogue of being irritated, but I could, so noticing the irritation can kind of bring me back to this practice. So no, that's a good suggestion. Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I've also had this relationship with email, where every time before I even open my email, I actually just kind of gather my attention, and then I really approach every email, yeah, with kind of yeah, like a curiosity around my heart, any constriction, any opening, and certainly kind of speech in the response as I'm typing. That could be if it's not a person. In kind of in real time, so to speak, it could certainly be something like email, or it could be like your phone, just your relationship with your phone at all. So many people have a contentious, maybe overuse of their phone, or just a feeling about it that, they have to always be available and they don't want to be. So there could be a lot that you could, yeah, orient around, if not like a specific person, but a specific activity or even object. Yeah, I really appreciate that question. Yeah, to bring it to life, really. Yeah. Um, yes, Bartek. And then I see some in the chat that I'll respond to after this. Yeah.
Hi, Peace. Hi, nice to meet you. Hi. I think I agree with you regarding the dana and the sila and then the bhavana, the cultivation. It resonates with me, especially with the even dana. Like I feel good, like during and after, and you can then even the memory of it, of giving something, is just still feels good. It's just amazing quality that we all can, attain. It's easy. It's just like letting go of something like that's not belong to me. It's just this kind of practice. It's simple, but it's got a huge effect on everyone's. And I think all these factors, they need to come together actually for us to a little bit deepen in the practice. And yeah, I appreciate this talk. It's a great reminder because I think it's easy to forget. And you mentioned something now that I'm coming back to the question regarding the interconnectedness that Thich Nhat Hanh was quite often talk about. And I was just wondering, because I guess this understanding, maybe in your opinion, how do you think we can come to this understanding by ourselves? Because I think it's very profound to me to understand that we are one, right? On on a deeper level, dropping all this, stripping all the layers that I guess we gaining through our lives of ourselves, beliefs, and those opinions, prejudices we all have. And underneath that, there's two, in my opinion, there's this just one consciousness, that this one being that just receive everything just as it is. And in your opinion, can you explain more a little bit? How do you understand this interconnectedness, and how did you get your understanding around this maybe interconnectedness? If you can explain more, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for, yeah, that big question.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and I think you pointed to, I think, yeah, the response that actually feels most alive for me right now is that the way I orient to it is that I am one person with one set of opinions, one set of views, one set of experiences. I cannot, in and of myself, know your experience in its
Mhm.
totality, know anyone else's experience in their totality. To me, that says that we all need each other,
Yes.
and it means that we need each other to see more clearly. Speaking of that, actually, Thich Nhat Hanh said the next Buddha is the Sangha, and he said that I think in part actually because what I'm referring to in mind as well is Indra's net. And Indra's net, it's a net, it's like a web, and in that web, at every kind of cross section, there's a jewel, a diamond. that's said, and it's a multifaceted diamond. And so each jewel is reflecting different elements that you know, one jewel can certainly not perceive in the way that I'm saying you have your own experience and I have this own experience. And so it's that the jewel can reflect the entirety of all things, but each individual jewel can't reflect the entirety of all things because we're situated so differently. And so that's very much how I understand kind of the interconnectedness of all of us. And I think I also heard in your question kind of a longing for like the ease of our like humanity to be together. And I like in my kind of view and understanding, I feel like I'm not sure there's because of the vast diversity, like the infinite diversity of our contexts and experiences, I think there's always going to be disagreement, which I feel comfortable with, right? I feel comfortable that,
Absolutely.
yeah, there are ways in which we just won't understand or agree one another with one another. And that's okay as long as we can like coexist, right? And respect one another and not harm one another. I think that's another part of my understanding
Mhm.
of it all
Yeah.
is the lack of expectation that it will be, you know, hugs and kisses and a love fest all around, but that it will that there will be difficulty and upset and not understanding one another. But if there is a mutual respect that's really honored, I think there's a way that we can be together and learn from one another, and kind of grow together in really beautiful ways. And I do think it's possible. I think it's really hard where we are right now as a humanity, um,
Yeah.
you know, more than humanity and like the context of just the ecology and its collapse. Um, but I do think that there's potential there. Um, yeah, so that's maybe my response in brief.
That's great. Thank you very much. Just wanted to
Yeah,
know your point of view, and that's amazing that you see in this way. You
yeah.
can help
Well,
us.
thank
Thanks a
you.
lot. Thank you,
Yeah, of
please.
course. Thank you. Yeah. And I'll look here now to the chat. There's a question. Is there a connection between restlessness and procrastination? I think there definitely could be. I don't know that there always is. Um, I'm just going to pause and really consider. Yeah, I mean, yes, I think there can definitely be an overlap. Procrastination, you know, can show up in so many different ways and can involve, you know, layers of anxiety, um, where and restlessness certainly can involve layers of anxiety that aren't necessarily about procrastinating per se. Um, but I do see a connection maybe that you're pointing to as well, and I think that they're with both of them actually, just you know, not knowing exactly what's bringing the question, but maybe a response to each of them um, might be actually this might be counterintuitive, but what I want to say is movement. And what I mean by that is with restlessness, sitting and actually being steady can support restlessness, so to speak, in the way that, like I was saying, you kind of have to just allow it to settle and unwind on its own. But when I say movement, I mean like being with something that's moving, whether it's the sensation of breathing through the body or the belly moving, or it could even be walking meditation, like allowing the energy to move, but actually still directing the mind in a steady way. That can be really helpful. And then procrastination, also actually inviting movement into, you know, it could be the thing that you're procrastinating, which would maybe just be an easiest solution, but it's obviously hard when you're procrastinating. But it actually could just be something, just something, actually focusing the mind and moving forward in a particular way. You know, like some writers when they're saying they have writer's block, they're like, I sometimes I just free write. I just write anything that comes, and I just allow kind of the procrastination to unwind itself because eventually there'll be something that punctures that bubble. So that comes to mind right now as a response potentially. But I certainly think that they're connected. And so yeah, I hope that that's useful in some way. Let's see this next question. What can be done with fear if not having enough in the future as we age, which affects how we live cautiously today? Let me read that again. Be done with fear of not having enough in the future as we age. Yeah, which affects how we live cautiously today. Thank you for that question. Yeah, I think about that myself. A few things come to mind. One is that we don't know how long we're living, and that we are all aging, but we don't know when the end of our lives come. So there's, for me, speaking very personally about my reflection on this question, is actually living fully now invites a quality of experience that that supersedes any anxiety that might come up around the future. And I say that just as like kind of a lived experience of a particular moment. And now it depends on kind of the not having enough, whether it's financial, whether it's what kind of not enough one is concerned about. And certainly your age today, I guess, would have some bearing on maybe just making some practical decisions around how to kind of move forward. And I say that, and I'm kind of also chuckling inwardly as a person who offers freely and doesn't know what's coming in return in forms of financial support, so to speak. And so for me, just again to speak from my experience, it is a lot of actual just trust and not knowing what will come. And there's a way in which I've both kind of again in practical kind of speak have kind of a safety net of family that I often say I live in New York City. If things fall apart, I have siblings I can live with, and my mother lives in this country and I can also live with her, and I have family in other countries, so like there is like that's kind of also how I support myself, and actually allowing myself to inhabit this moment is knowing kind of that kind of worst case scenario. So what does happen if I don't have enough? And I actually answer that question for myself. And that for me is living with family. And so it can certainly affect, I'm now looking at the second part, how cautious we are today. I think there's good reason to be cautious in many ways. If we're talking financial, if we're talking professional even. But I also think that there's a way, just talking about kind of referring back to like the constricted heart and the open heart, there's a way that when we live with an open heart, there's a different movement of energy that moves through us, that moves through the people we're in contact with. And it's something I can't actually tell you what's happening, but in my experience and in the experience of people that I've seen and teachers that I have known, when we open the heart in those ways, it's not that it's a guarantee, but it is, if we're talking about living cautiously, it's a way to allow us to open to new possibilities. Because in constricting the heart, we're limiting possibilities, and opening the heart, we're opening to possibilities, and that in and of itself might be the way out of this kind of mystery of not knowing what's in the future. We never know what's in the future, but if we offer ourselves more options, there are more possibilities. So that's what's coming to mind now as I reflect on this question, and I do reflect on it often. And my kind of personal determination is to commit to living with an open heart, knowing that there's in my experience like kind of a a quality of presence in life here and now that's I'm having like this image, but it's actually more full of it. Like there's I want to say a heftiness to it. I can feel like an anemic kind of response to my life when I have a constricted heart, and when it's open, there's just more here. There's more energy. There's more possibility here and now, and I know in my experience that is open to possible like doorways and avenues that I wouldn't have pursued. So I hope that that response and reflection is useful to you, and I really hear it as a really big question that's in many of our lives, with the economies that are changing all around the world. It has real life consequences, and so I appreciate the question. And again, it's like I have no answers, but I kind of aim to lead with an open heart to see, and so far it's shown me a life that I didn't know was possible. Yeah, and so I'm noticing the time, and really am so grateful for your questions and your kind attention and consideration and your sincere practice. And so grateful for this Sangha Live, just being existing and offering all of us this opportunity to be here to practice together. And I too am often in your seat when not here, sitting in Sangha, and I am a student and practitioner first, and hope that what I've offered here has been supportive and beneficial for your practice as well. And so I see in the chat you have opportunities for offering donations and being in community on Sangha Live Connect and Facebook, Instagram, and email as well. And I think I'll just close with a dedication of merit, that the goodness of our practice be truly felt in each and every one of us, and may it be shared with all beings whom we come in contact with, rippling out to all beings everywhere without exception. Let the hearts open, feel gratitude, and be liberated with joy, connection, and ease. Thank you all for your practice. Be well.